What if being less useful could actually make you more creative? Today's guest is going to teach you how to stop running yourself ragged to prove your worth and start to get quiet enough to hear your own creative voice and act on it. Welcome to Unleash Your Inner Creative with Lauren LaGrasso. I'm Lauren LaGrasso. I'm a 3-time Webby Award-winning podcast host and producer, singer-songwriter, public speaker, and creative coach. And this show is meant to give you the tools to claim your birthright to creativity and go after your heart's wildest dreams. Today, I'm talking with photographer and documentarian Lindsey Lerner. She's a creator of Field Notes from the Work in the Wild, a beautiful project that lives on Substack that documents people in the messy middle of making their most meaningful work. Lindsey started out as a creative coaching client with me and has since become a dear friend and creative ally. In this conversation, we talk about what it means to be less useful and just be, why the messy middle is actually where the magic happens, how to stop overfunctioning and start trusting, and what happens when you stop building everybody else's dream and start to finally make room for your own. We also get into creative reinvention, how to keep the faith when your path makes no sense, the power of asking for help, and how Lindsey built a body of work completely on her own terms, combining all of her creative passions. This is one for anybody who has ever confused hustle for worth or wondered if there is a more authentic, holistic way to create. The answer is yes, there is, and Lindsey can teach you how. So let's get into it. Here is my conversation with Lindsey Lerner. Lindsey Lerner, I love you so much. Welcome to Unleash Your Inner Creative, one of the most creative people I know. I'm glad you're here.
I love you too. I'm so happy to be here.
So this journey was a long time coming. We first started out because we met on LinkedIn. Is that right?
Yes. A lot of people throw shade at LinkedIn, but I can't lie. Most of my dearest friends have come from LinkedIn in the past 5 years.
And honestly, Lindsey's a bit of a LinkedIn influencer, so you might want to follow her on there so you can get your zhuzh. Like she inspires me to be more consistent and to show up more on LinkedIn because she is just there every day grinding it out.
I will take that. Thank you.
But you've got a real presence on there. So we met through LinkedIn. We did like an informational call, just the two of us talking about our lives and what we do. And at the end, you're like, oh, I'd love to work with you as a creative coaching client. So
yeah,
you started out as my client and now we've become real life friends. I mean, it was very clear from pretty early on that like we were cut from a similar cloth.
Definitely.
And that this was going to be a lifelong bond. But I'm just so grateful to know you and I'm so inspired by you. I mean, I would always say like, I'll give people homework to do between coaching sessions and then they'll come back and be like, oh, I got most of it done, but I couldn't get all of it done. Lindsey would not only do my homework, she'd do like 15 extra steps. And I'm like, how did a human being do like, she has the output of AI, but it is all human generated.
Yeah, the nerdiness continues.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll ever shake that, which I think is a good thing.
It's such a good thing because when you say you're going to do something, you do it and then some. And I think that is such an inspiring energy to be around. I guess before we go any further, where does that come from? Like, are you just made that way? Is it like a faith-driven thing? Is it fear-driven? Like, what is that like energy, endless energy for output?
Yeah, I think in the past, it was definitely a fear-driven thing. Now that you like articulated it in that opposition of fear versus faith, or maybe, baby Lindsey was probably just stoked on life, is stoked on life. I always had that notion of say what you mean what you say. And that was how I was raised and how I was brought up. And then I think as I got older into like high school, college and whatnot, it was definitely more of a, to your point, of fear-based overcompensation of and I was always in places where I at least felt like the odd person out. I got to art school and that didn't feel right. And then I was at business school and that didn't feel right. And every place that I was in didn't quite fit in the way that it didn't feel right. And so therefore it came from a place of, well, no matter what I do, it has to be amazing and it has to be more than amazing, so that it is just undeniable that everything is okay. And then I would say over the last 6-7 years or so, or of unlearning that, and now it comes from a place of I know how well I can do, and I always want to do that, if not better, from a point of just being as good as possible as a human being.
How have you seen a change in the way that work is received since you've changed the foundation that it's built upon?
That shift has been everything, especially in the last year, 2 years, has been the most dramatic shift. And it has been it was a shift from a belief of that not enoughness, that inner narrative of, oh, I don't know, someone's going to figure out something. And it's not enough. It's not enough. And then a couple of years ago, really was working on that, on unlearning that, on undoing that. And now coming from a place of, I trust myself, and no matter what it is that is the output, I'm confident in that. And if someone doesn't like it, then that's their problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And at the very least, it feels better to you. And then
yeah,
when
exactly.
you do have the success from that point of view, it feels like more of a win because you actually attained it from a holistic place versus a place of trying to seek your worth in the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I was talking to somebody about that yesterday. We were just talking about, it was confidence was probably the overarching theme. And it was more so thinking through it as all of the things that I want to do, or that I've been dreaming up or scheming up, or any and all things, in a way have already happened. And I'm confident in that happening. And this is more of I'm showing up every day, I'm doing the work, but that confidence and that enoughness is fueling it, rather than I must get up, I must hustle, I must, do the tech bro routine at 4 a.m. before anyone else in the house gets up.
A cold plunge.
Yes.
Oh, I cold plunge so hard. When the cold plunging thing first started becoming a real trend, I wrote, hear me out. How about we warm plunge instead?
Seriously.
Like, I'm so happy for you if that makes such a difference in your life, but I'm pretty sure we'll all survive without plunging our bodies into sub-zero water. It's going to be okay.
Truly.
So, I mean, I've only known you for like a year and a half, which is crazy because I feel like I've known you my whole life. But when we started working together, you were doing all these different things. Like, I would say you were still like very much in a role of service, helping all these other people achieving their dreams, or like building their own businesses and hustling.
Definitely.
And as we started working together, kept working together, as you saw your own vision more clearly, you dropped all of these roles and I was scared when you did this, but I was so proud of you and so inspired by you. I was like, this is a badass woman. Like, you just quit these jobs with reckless abandon because you knew they no longer served you. And I want to know, because you were in the past a person who was so driven by hustling, surviving, proving yourself.
For sure.
How did you get to that point where you were just you had this deep faith in yourself?
If we can go back a little bit.
Rewind.
Yeah. Rewind. I think the context is important.
Yes.
I had as you know, but for the audience, I had a business that I started during undergrad that ran until 2019. And that business was called Level Exchange. And Level Exchange was originally a platform that match made between local bars, coffee shops, restaurants, and musicians in Rhode Island based on fair trade principles. And then fast forward through a wild series of events, I ended up being a tour manager, had a couple of click moments, recognizing that local artists also needed content, they needed communications, they needed strategy, and ended up pivoting Level Exchange into a co-working and a production space for local artists in and around New England. And that was my baby. And even now that I have a baby, I still think of that business as a baby. And I poured everything into that, so much so that due to unfortunate circumstances and a creepy investor and 9 months of sexual harassment litigation, had to shut that business down. And through that, I just remember it was December of 2019 and having to write the email to all of the people that who had supported me over 7-8 years of my life, who had showed up, the musicians, the artists, the other investors. We worked with city and state government a lot. So there's a lot of local politicians, just all these people being like, hey, this is not going to exist anymore. And thinking like, well, that's it for me. It was just so much. It was Lindsey is Level Exchange and vice versa. And so I thought, since that entity no longer existed, that it was like, well, there goes all those relationships, those people, those everything. And little by little in the weeks that followed that, I was getting calls and emails and texts with, hey, well, let me know what you're doing next. And I was like, oh, we're still here. We're still in relationship. We're doing this thing. And so that
you
was,
love me?
Right. I was like, oh, wow. All right. That's fantastic. And so just that I'm sharing that as the context of knowing what happens when you pour yourself into, quote unquote, just a job, just a company, just a role, what have you. And so then fast forward to more so, I think, what you're asking around the shedding of all these other identities. Once I had done it once with like the biggest thing that was of most importance, it's a lot easier. It's like any other muscle. It was a lot easier to do that. And they weren't even official, quote unquote, jobs. Like
Right.
I was either an independent contractor or I was contracted to build a thing to whatever it was that I was doing. And they were definitely, some of them were harder conversations than others, but I knew very deep that it was the right decision.
Okay. This is all great. So many things to break down from that. One thing is, it sounds like when you shut Level Exchange down, you had to go through a bit of an ego death of like, maybe that's an understatement. But
yes.
how, for people out there who are going through something similar, like, I have someone very close in my life who dedicated their entire life to this one thing, is now realizing, oh, that one thing isn't what I thought it was. It's not giving me what I thought I would get out of it. And like, I just don't feel happy. But what do I do now? Because I gave my whole life to this thing. If
Definitely.
someone out there is listening and in a stage like that, or at least seeing I need to incorporate something else in because I've made this one thing my everything.
Right.
What's your advice to them, and how did you heal from that experience?
Totally. I think it's more, if you know, like you're the only person who knows. And at the end of the day, you're the only person who is living in your body and your skin and your bones and moving through the world.
I actually have another person living in my body right now.
That's true. Plot twist.
Shout out to all the mothers. But
they'll know too. Yeah, so they'll know too. It'll get uncomfy in there for them. I think with that though, it's there was, like I said, a deep knowing of like, this is not it. And also in that, same well, if you will, like there is more. You can dig deeper. There's more to you than whatever it is that you're building or doing or whoever you think you are. There is more. And I'm saying that from an expansive perspective, not a, you're just digging endlessly. It's like you can take up more space, you can occupy new spaces. And it's more so it was that inner digging that really started to shift that headspace for me. And obviously it did not hurt to have a community of people who were like, oh, yes, this sucked. Yes, this hurt. We're going to grieve that. In hindsight, if I could go back, I would spend more time actually grieving that and sitting in that and being in that mud, so to speak, rather than being like, okay, my response at that time was like, well, what are we building next? And I dove right into the next thing, which was its own therapeutic adventure.
Why is sitting in the grief and moving through the grief important before the next dive?
I think it's about fully taking stock of what transpired and what actually happened, not just intellectually, but in your heart, in your soul, in your being. And especially at that time, there was a chasm, like head and heart. There was just a chasm between the two. And I knew intellectually everything. I can intellectualize the shit out of anything, as you know. And so that wasn't the problem, because I could fake it till I made it all the way through. Whether I had a therapist at that point, and I could bullshit my way through anything. I can say all the right things, but saying, or rather knowing versus knowing, and then closing the chasm between the two, that's what I think sitting in that mud actually does.
Where are you at now with sitting in the mud?
It's all mud. But I'm loving it now.
She's like, a mud lady now, ladies and gents.
We're rolling around in it. I would show you, but I don't.
Can you put that on a t-shirt? It's all mud.
It's all mud. I have a tattoo. I don't know if you've seen it, because every time we've hung out, it's been in cold weather. But I have a tattoo of a lotus flower, and it comes from the Thich Nhat Hanh quote, "No mud, no lotus." And so that's why I got that, was like as a reminder of, that notion of the only way out is through. And at this point, I'm speaking in bumper stickers, but they all have they all have truth.
They do. I remember at one point in our work together, I said the following to you: be less useful.
Yes.
Because you are a person of such high utility. Like your company was literally called Human Swiss Army Knife. Like, I don't know if there's anybody out there who like has more use and like ability than you. Where are you at in that journey with just knowing you deserve to exist and take up space and be your full creative artistic self?
Oh, it's amazing. It's almost, I've swung almost too far the other way. And, before we hit record, that's where I'm finding my equilibrium now, is that when I met you, I had just come off, it was like, 2024. 2024 was my best year in business ever. I was, to your point, crushing it. I had hit almost 200K. I've never made that kind of money before, and was like, yes, I did it. And, the little things like going to the grocery store, not shopping the sales, just grabbing whatever you need, keeping it moving, going out. I live in New York City, so being able to just grab a bite to eat or take my kids somewhere, whatever it was, that felt very freeing, and I had never had that experience. But my body was responding in pretty gnarly ways, with like headaches and rashes and all sorts of other things that we don't need to get into. But like, I knew, to our point earlier, like I knew that something was off, and that is initially when we had crossed paths. So when you said, be less useful, I'm a very literal person, and I took that and just really ran with it, because I spent, the following year just diving into all things art, creativity, making, and essentially shut off my business brain, my startup brain, anything that was more logical. And so it's been very nourishing.
Yeah. I mean, I love it because it kind of mirrors the thing you were talking about before, because you spoke about how you had to bring your heart and your head together and close the chasm. Now, what you're talking about at this current juncture that you're in is you were like all business, all utility for so long. I mean, you're still doing creative stuff, but like that was the focus. And then this past year has been mostly creativity, art, storytelling, really like having a holistic, nourishing experience. And now you're talking about closing the chasm between those two things. I just think it's interesting how everything is the same everywhere all the time.
Yes.
But and another thing that I was just thinking of as you were talking, because I'm like thinking back, like my coaching experience with you was like one of the most magical ones, because it helped me trust myself more, because you and I were so connected that I was like, oh, wow, like all these things I'm seeing, they're real. And like, it's mirrored in Lindsey's experience. And I had this grand vision of you, because one of the first things you sent me, okay, you weren't doing photography much at this time, right? When we first met, you sent me this thing of all these photos you took. And I was like, this woman, she's a photographer. Like, why isn't she doing this? This is such a piece of the heartbeat of who she is. And I wrote you back and I was like, I love everything you sent. The photos really stand out to me. Like, you are a photographer. You are a visual storyteller. I'm like,
sure,
there's something here. And then I also had this vision of you giving talks, like using your photos, projecting them onto the screen and like storytelling with it. And it's so cool that now you're finding a way. And this was like your own doing. I did not give you the idea to do this. I just said those two things to you and you ran off and did all your homework and then some. But that you found a way to like integrate those two things. So talk about what you've been doing for the last year with Field Notes and like what that creative journey has been like.
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey. I think when we had initially met and had, a couple of our first sessions, and then I had those tough conversations with clients, with partners, with collaborators to be like, hey, I need the space to be able to take up space in a different way. And the prompt to myself was through my work life, through my life, I have spent time in many different industries, in many different arenas, both literally and figuratively, around just overall a very squiggly path. And so to me, it was never about, quote unquote, just being a photographer or just being a storyteller or just being an anthropologist or just. And again, I say that, please nobody be offended by that. For me, my brain does not fire on all cylinders when I am just doing one thing over and over and over again, day to day. Even in high school, I was working 3-4 jobs at a time. Like this has always happened. This is not new.
No, you're in good company. A lot of multi-passionate creatives listening.
Yeah, exactly. And so the prompt to myself was, how do I braid together photography, anthropology, and storytelling in a way that only I can do? I enjoy writing, but I did not want to be judged as a writer. One, because both my best friend and my wife are incredible writers and they are trained writers. And I'm like, I don't want to get in the arena with them. We're not fighting in that. No, thank you. And I know from my time having done photography since I was a little kid, working at newspapers, portrait studios, shooting weddings, doing all of the things, I knew that photography for me was less about the art. I enjoy the craft of it, but I don't geek out on it in a way that I've seen other photographers. It was always, always, always about the people. So it was so much more about an energetic exchange with whoever I'm photographing rather than, oh, I need to make sure that the lighting is perfect and I have the right gear and lens and so on and so forth. I don't give a shit about the other things. And then just from having I spent a decade plus in the music industry and touring and whatnot, and definitely picked up a few things along the way. I spent a lot of time with spoken word poets and rappers and whatnot. And I think that definitely rubbed off. And so the natural cadence of the way that I speak, people tend to ask like, oh, are you a spoken word poet? And I'm like, mm-mm. And again, that's because like I have toured with phenomenal spoken word poets and I am not attempting to compete in that way. And so it was, if I'm honest, pretty selfish of like, how do I create something that only I can do so that it can't be compared?
It's the only way to do it though, Liz.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, it would have been a whole hell of a lot easier to be like, okay, this is how you do photography. I could go back and get an MFA and I could follow that path. Or if I live in New York City, there's plenty of open mics and spoken word, poetry, ways to get involved in things. And I wasn't interested in any of that. And again, it's about, as much as it is about me creating, it is about connecting with people. Mm. And so that's how this project, which is now called Field Notes from the Work in the Wild, was born. And I think about it as a living documentary practice. It's one conversation at a time. And it's, if we're like really geeking out and nerding out, which I think this is the place, Field Notes is humanist field documentation. And it's sitting at that intersection of photography, oral storytelling, and cultural anthropology, which is my background.
So beautiful. And it lives on Substack.
It lives on Substack.
And so basically you go in and you take pictures of people in their workspace, like in the middle, in the messy middle.
Yeah. The prompt is essentially, when I reach out to someone for this, is like, where is your happy place that your deepest, most meaningful work transpires? And so some people, it's their music studio, their yoga studio, their garden, their favorite park, wherever it is. And then I meet them where they're physically at.
I love it. I love it. It's so, I mean, you have to give it a follow if you don't already. Hi, creative. If listening to this conversation is stirring something up in you and you're realizing you want support bringing your own creative vision to life, I would love to help. In my creative coaching practice, I work with artists, entrepreneurs, leaders, multi-passionate humans, and people in the middle of major life transitions who know that there's something inside of them that they want to express, but they need help to get unstuck, get clear, and actually start moving. Whether you're trying to start a project, make a career pivot, reconnect with your creativity, or trust yourself more deeply, this is the work we can do together. My approach blends creative strategy, mindset, and deep inner work. So we make the project, but you're not just making things. You're also becoming more fully yourself in the process. If that calls to you, I would love to connect. You can book a free 15-minute discovery call at laurenlagrasso.com or by emailing me, lauren.lagrasso@gmail.com. Okay, back to the show. You took the leap. You were like, I'm going all in on this. And there have been a lot of moments where you've questioned it, or you, like, there was a big period last spring where you were like trying to get a full-time job. And I'm like, don't do it. So I went from being like, are you sure you want to quit that job? To being like, don't you dare go back and get a full-time job. Because I just know that you're onto something and something is coming. But you've had to really cultivate your faith in the last year, especially you had a child in this time. Like, you already had a child, but you had a baby that came through in this time. You and your wife moved to a new home. Like, how have you held the line and kept the faith in those wobbly moments?
Definitely. It has been excruciating at times. And I think I've done my best to share that transparently. The irony is not lost on me if I'm sharing everyone's messy middle. If I don't share my own, I hold myself to that same standard and accountability. And I think that's also, from more of a spiritual perspective, from a faith perspective, that has been my biggest learning, especially over the last 6 months or so. And let's see, you mentioned human Swiss Army knife. I am so wildly confident in my ability to problem solve and to get shit done. And no matter what scenario I'm put in, I'm like, I got this, no problem. When it comes to asking for help, that has been a learned skill. And I thought that I was doing pretty damn good at it throughout all these different projects and things that I have worked on. And then the universe said, but your personal life, will you ask for help there? And I didn't even clock that I hadn't really done that. And 2026 came around, and it was like, okay, this has been almost a year of field notes. There were many signs of life. I ended up with 20 paid subscribers. Like, how cool. $2,000 off of posting photos and these interviews and spoken record pieces on Substack. Like, I didn't imagine that. I was fortunate enough to have 3 patrons, like old school patrons of the arts, reach out to me and say, hey, we want this to keep going. How can we help? I'm like, well, a mortgage in New York City takes some funding. They said, okay. And, $15K came in through that. Amazing. And then there was a period of time where I have friends who are much older who were very unfamiliar with Substack, and they said, is there any other way that we can give you money? And there was a brief period of time that there was a GoFundMe, and another $1,500 came in through that. And so all in, let's say under 25K, or rather 25K had come in. And like, holy shit, how cool is that? That this like wild, wacky idea that I had been executing on could come up with any money, never mind $25,000. That's amazing. And holding two things to be true at the same time, $25,000 is not enough to live in New York City. And so to your point, I had gone out looking for other roles, and the universe said, no. I've never been rejected from so many things in my life. Jobs, everything. This was like of just year of rejection in every sense of the word, which many friends have reframed as redirection. I thank you. I got it. Doesn't, to your point, does not ease the anxiety around it. Only I can do that. And when it came to February was, and again, like these two things being true at the same time are so, as a very literal person, that messes with my head so much. So I was fortunate enough to give back-to-back TED Talks at the beginning of February. And so in that sense, it was like, hell yeah, like I finally figured this out. Somebody said, yes, I get to do a thing. I get to talk about field notes in this big way. How amazing is that? And that was when, like, I, as an individual, had, or, you know, my business had completely run out of cash. I haven't had that since I was in college.
Maybe high school for you, though, because you had a thriving photography business in high school.
Yeah. And so it was like, whoa. And I am very grateful that I probably along the way could have asked my parents for help. They love me. They care about me. I know that, but I never let myself ever ask for any support in that way. And so, you know, fast forward now, I was like, we have this like TED experience. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. And then the reckoning of, we got bills to pay. And I had to go to my wife and be like, hey, like, this is the first time in the 7 years of our relationship of like, I don't got this. And that was like, I'm like emotional about it now because that's fucking hard. And to know and to see and to hear her belief in me, at first my reaction was like, oh shit, like I got reprogrammed to like hustle Lindsey. I was like, okay, I gotta go out there, I gotta figure this out, we gotta do this. I was going to meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting for like 30 days straight, and then just hit a wall. And this is all very fresh. This is in the last couple of months. And then finally was like, oh, that is not, we know better. Like, why are you doing this? And then a follow-up conversation with my wife where she was like, well, that was kind of the point of this whole marriage thing. That's it. You tell me all the time.
That's going to make me cry.
I know. But she was like, you talk to me all the time. You talk to our kids all the time about how we're a team and like, we're going to figure this out together. And she's like, wouldn't you do the same for me? I'm like, yeah, of course, but that's you. So come on. And she was like, stop with this, double standard bullshit. And let's figure this out. And she's like, if I did not believe in you, then we would not be having this conversation. But I do. And so keep going. And it's gonna be okay. And I was like, okay, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. And so it's like, I thought I had done so much work, nervous system regulation. And now I'm like, whoa, there's a deeper excavation here.
Oh my gosh. First of all, love you, Selena. That is so beautiful.
Truly.
Selena is Lindsey's wife, if you weren't getting that. I've never met her, but I love her. Whoa, Linz, like that is so powerful because I'm definitely not where you are yet. Like, I've been in the opposite position where I'm, supporting, but like I've never let myself, I haven't to this point been in the place where I needed that, but I've never let myself have that,
Totally.
And so I think it is so brave and, like it really comes, I'm sure that you struggled with it, but like to me, it shows your self-worth that you were saying like, I know I am enough to like go to my wife and share this issue. And like, obviously a lot of credit to your wife too, but I guess I'm rambling, but I want to know what kind of spiritual healing did this bring to you to see that you're held in this way and that you have all this inherent worth as a human?
Such a good question. Not surprising.
Put that on my tombstone.
Truly. Yeah, I think really coming from that place of knowing and being very clear, and finally, after what feels like my entire life of letting myself, and this is, I think, everything that we worked on in a coaching relationship was being seen, heard, and understood. I know, and that's why I'm so good at getting shit done. I can very easily see, hear, and understand other people, and to receive that is really, really, really difficult. And that's what Field Notes has really pushed me to do, was because as much as I am holding the space for these other people and photographing and interviewing and telling their stories, at the same time, we wouldn't get to the depths of what we cover if I wasn't willing to be open and vulnerable and have that same space. And so I think about Field Notes very much is a spiritual practice for me, without a doubt. And I remember, I think about it a lot because the creative thesis that you and I worked on was something to the effect of to shine a light on the stories, skills, and strengths that often go unnoticed. And that was the main chunk of it. That was the exciting part. But then the other part of it was so people, and I think the first time that I wrote this was very external. And I said that so people feel seen, heard, understood, so that they can step into places that they never thought they could otherwise. And you pushed back and you were like, girl, where are you in this? And I was like, weird how that works. Okay. And so then changing it to shine a light on the stories, skills, and strengths that often go unnoticed, so people feel, and myself feel, fully seen, deeply understood, and can step into spaces that they never thought they belonged in.
Ooh,
and so
I've chills.
Yeah. I mean, hey, girl, you helped me get to that place. So I think about that frequently. And that is deeply embedded into what Field Notes has evolved into. And this dance with other people, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. I love all of that. And I do want to just delve a little deeper and ask, how has being supported by your wife in this way, both in her support of you as a creative and her belief that you are building something that is powerful, and also just literally letting yourself be held, how has that helped you heal?
We are in this moment, and it's a lot of noticing and watching the stories come up, and then observing them, and then making a conscious decision to be like, okay, I'm going to hold on to that story and let that be true, or acknowledge, hey, that's not true anymore. That, that's a good meditation exercise of just visualizing everything as clouds. And now I'm just okay, that cloud can keep on keeping on. It doesn't need to stay here. And so that's been the practice lately, especially with, this baby is 4 months old and obviously has a lot of needs and whatnot. And so I catch myself doing that every once in a while. Even tonight, I'm going to an event after we're done here. And I caught myself earlier being okay, well, I need to lay out my older daughter's pajamas and put toothpaste on her toothbrush and make sure that she has her medicine and make sure that, dinner's laid out and all of these things. And it's well, I don't need to do that. Selena is a perfectly competent human being. It's going to be okay. And so those are still the places in which there is some of that overcompensation. Yeah. That when I notice it, I'm oh, that's what that is. We don't need to do that. Well, because Selena has agency and she'll ask.
Right. I mean, I so relate to you. When I feel afraid at all, I just go into overfunctioning. That is what I do. And I have luckily through the pregnancy had to learn to step back a bit because I just like, I couldn't cook my first trimester. Like I was like, the look of raw meat was so repulsive to me. And the way Tim stepped up, because I was just not able to be functioning in that way. I mean, he cooked all my dinners. I still have barely washed a dish in almost 5 months. Like,
good job,
you
Tim.
know, he's been amazing, but I think you only get to see that if you put your hand up and say, I need help. And
Totally.
like, I can't do it all. And also, like, how dare we deprive somebody of taking care of another human being, specifically us, in that way when like we have found joy and purpose in doing it.
Exactly.
So I think it's so important to, like you said, give people agency, but also allow them to show up for you because it's an honor. It's an honor to take care of someone and to hold space in whatever way you're doing it. So
exactly.
I think it's just a really good lesson and something we all need to know as like people who struggle with anxiety or overfunctioning, or like, you know, like if that's your go-to move when you feel unsafe, consider being less useful.
Yes. Believe it or not, the world is still, I mean, arguably maybe not functioning right now.
That's not your fault though.
But not my fault.
There are many other people that led to that, but it was not you.
Yes, exactly.
So the other thing we talked about before we came on air was you've had this, okay, we briefly like teased this earlier, but you had this period of high functioning, like business, badass woman, helping all these other people make their dreams come true and like working on that stuff. Then you've had this year where you've completely delved into your creativity while still trying to make things happen and making things happen. But really the focus was creativity, expression. Now you're trying to bring the worlds together.
Yeah.
What does that look like? And what is the approach for someone out there who maybe is in a similar place?
Yeah. It's messy. It's so messy. It's so much yelling, so many voice notes to myself, but there's a lot of voice notes that are like podcast in length to some very, very dear friends. Just like, what are we doing here? What is happening? And it's been really, really interesting if I can remove myself from it every once in a while and be more of that witness rather than being very caught and very stressed and very freaked out, which is very difficult in this moment to do. But when I do it, I always feel better afterwards. And so it's just thinking through, again, as someone who's a very literal person, when two things are true at the same time that don't feel like they should be true or that have not historically been true, that just, it like actually physically gives me a headache. And so like,
I relate so much. I can't.
Yes. I'm like, but how do we do this? Right. And just think, then it usually ends up in some sort of wild existential spiral around, you know, capitalism and the state of the world and how did we get here and why did we get here? And then I really geek out and spend many hours productively procrastinating, or at least the illusion of productivity, going down wild rabbit holes of, you know, the history of just how we even came up with work and jobs and everything. And then I'm like, okay, let's bring it back. None of that was actually helpful. We're not moving the needle on any of it. And then it comes to, I think a lot of it is, I mean, it's putting yourself out there. It's being vulnerable. It's asking for help and asking, it's being willing to sit in the mud long enough to recognize and have the clarity to recognize what you need and then asking for it, which is so hard.
How do you do that? If somebody out there is listening or like, I don't want to ask for help, I'm scared. Like you're actually a person who I consider to be great at outreach. So how did you build that skill and how do you do it?
Yeah, I think what I've realized is I think I used to cast a very wide net and that made me feel better because it was like, well, obviously if I email 500 people, they're not all going to respond to me. And so past Lindsey would do that and that would make me feel better because it would be like, if I send 500 emails and then I get, I don't know, 10 responses and one of them says yes, then woohoo, that's a win. Now it's much more concentrated. And that is, I mean, it's time, it's age, it's craft, it's, professionalism, however you want to call it. But I think the more difficult part, and the part that now being on the receiving end of a lot of cold emails and pitches and whatnot, I do appreciate when folks, myself included, when you actually sit down, when you do the research, when you're clear on what your own mission, vision, values are before you outreach to somebody else and say, hey, this is what I want to, fill up your inbox with, and I'm asking for your time. And so that's been a big part of this evolution.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, when somebody sends you a generic pitch, it's the worst thing ever. If I have to write you back and ask, what do you want? You have not done a good job in writing.
Totally.
So I think it's just like at least being clear with, if you have an ask, what your ask is. Like,
definitely
giving a compliment of some sort that kind of connects you to the person. There's so many ways
100%.
to specialize it, but Lindsey's exactly right. Okay. What is the role of surrender right now? And how are you engaging with that?
I think that's the whole role.
The lead, some might say.
The lead. Yeah, I've been talking about it as somebody who hates roller coasters. I've been pushing myself to think about it in this way. And it's, I mean, especially with outreach, both warm and cold, and putting my artwork into the world and working on a larger scale event coming up in the fall. Like, there's a lot of things up in the air. There's a gazillion things that could go wrong. And then on top of it, I have a almost 10-year-old with a chronic illness, and I have a 4-month-old. Like, life is lifing. And so I'm very empathetic. And at the same time, to the point of where we started, I still have a very, very high expectation of my own capacity, my own abilities. I have a very high bar for other people. And that's where my my patience has worn thin, if you will. And I think I had a call with a friend recently who I thought we were just catching up, and then he really lovingly kicked my ass from a coaching perspective. And we had this whole experience, and then he made me tell him what I thought the whole point of the conversation was. And where we landed was, I know now, I do. And I have it on a sticky note right in front of me. And that's what I keep coming back to, because it's like, no.
I know. What is it? I know now I do?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Because it was like, I know finally.
Oh, and now I will go do it.
Yes. And there's no permission, there's no friction. And the essence of that is like, because I have gotten so clear on everything in terms of field notes, not everything in my life. I've gotten very clear when it comes to field notes, when it comes to this event and whatnot, that if there, and this is where more of the spiritual practice comes into it, is with that clarity, I know that what I'm putting out there is, I believe to be true. And so I'm going to put it out there. And if it's received, great. And if not, that's okay. I'm not going, in the past, I would send, a follow-up email and a follow-up email and a follow-up email. And now it's more of that energetic relationship of, I'm putting this out there, and if you want it, that's great. And if not, then the energy is going to keep moving.
I love that. So one thing we also discussed is the difference between your internal why and how you sell something. And that's actually something I've been thinking about a lot lately when it comes to like even the podcast. I'm like,
sure,
I might have this grand mission, but like I think I need to pare down what I am saying the offering is, because it's too confusing for people.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to heal humanity through creativity, but like maybe I can just say like, this is a podcast to help you be more creative. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep.
So that's my little example. But how is that showing up for you, and how are you working on it with this project Field Notes?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, for me, the essence of Field Notes is that creative thesis.
Yeah.
And if I'm talking to a potential sponsor, a partner, an advertiser, anybody like that, they could not give a shit less about anybody feeling seen, heard, or understood. They're like, and? Which, signals that they'd be the wrong partner to begin with. But also, it needs to be digestible enough. And this is top of mind because this morning, actually, I had this awesome human that I know reach out and be like, oh, I really want to do a retreat or like a day style workshop with you. And I'm like, okay, like lay it on me. And she had sent some information over and it was called the content retreat. And instantly I was like, like, that's that. No, thank you. Again, like just visceral reaction of like, absolutely not. I don't want to have anything to do with that. I was like, I make art, damn it. And then I knew that was my initial gut reaction. Then I bit my tongue and I was like, okay, this is not, I'm not going to go back and forth on this Google Doc. And so I called her this afternoon. I was like, hey, I'm going to be honest. The gut reaction was this. What was your intention? I know that you've run this before, and I know that we have a shared value system. So it's weird to me that this was the path you went down, but I know that it's working. So tell me what's up.
Yeah.
And literally it was this conversation. She was like, yes, Lindsey, I agree with you. I hear you. I hate it too. And at the same time, if she went and was like, oh, we're going to get together on a Friday. We're going to make some art and we're going to heal and we're going to figure our shit out. And we're going to basically have a therapy session. No one's going to come to that. But if we say this is a content retreat and we're going to make so many things that you can put all over the internet to make yourself feel awesome, people sign up for that. And I was like, oh, okay. And so now that's exactly what I'm going through with this Field Notes event, which is essentially acting on the vision that you had a year and a half ago. And so
I'm so excited. Tell everybody what it is.
Yeah. Field Notes Live, September 26th, Bronxlandia in the South Bronx. And it's a full day gathering in Hunts Point where, like I said, documentary, photography, oral storytelling, and cultural anthropology converge live. And if I say that to your average person, they're going to be like, no, thank you. I don't know. What is that? But if I say it's basically like the Moth and Ted in a concert had a baby, people are like, okay, yeah, sign me up for that. And so upon getting my ass kicked over the last couple of weeks with sponsorship conversations, rambling about what I'm so excited about, and then actually taking stock and being like, what did they need to be excited about? That's where that nuance has officially come full circle. And again, like I know these things.
Of course, but it's so much harder to do anything for yourself. Like I always say, coaches need coaches. Like seeing yourself accurately in your own business or your own creative idea accurately is far less easy, at least for those of us that have insight into other humans. It's far less easy than seeing somebody else accurately.
Right.
And like it's so brilliant. I think it's a great reminder for anyone listening who wants to monetize their creative work. Remember, sometimes your own internal compass might be different than the way in which you need to share the story with the world. And that's okay.
Totally.
That's okay.
Exactly.
Because you're still going to share the story. And as long as you're doing that, it doesn't really matter the way in which somebody finds their way into it or digests it for the first time.
100%. And it's also serendipitous that the venue that we're doing this at is owned by this woman, Majora Carter, who is just a badass woman from the South Bronx who's done just incredible work for the Bronx. And I was doing her field note. And during that, she's somebody who she's had a just like wildly successful career. And when I was interviewing her, it was interesting because at the beginning, she very strongly identified as an artist. And I was like, oh, nice. Like, that's not what I expected because she's done everything from speaking to teaching to real estate, all the things. And so for her to say, like, I'm an artist, I was like, wow, okay, we're taking a stance. That's fantastic. And so as she's speaking, long story long, she's going through her whole life. And she kept saying how she was doing all these business deals and whatnot. And I, in this space, this was recently. And so being in this space for me right now, where I'm attempting to integrate my business knowledge with my artistic integrity, I had asked her, I was like, well, I don't know. The math doesn't math for me on that. How are you telling me that you're an artist and then you're out here and you're doing this real estate development and you're working with city government and so on and so forth? And she stopped me in my tracks, Lauren, and this still keeps me up at night. And this was at least a month, if not two months ago. And she literally just said, she was like, well, isn't that the job of the artist, is to translate and to physically paint the picture so other people can see it how you see it. I was like, well, when you put it that way, yeah, okay. So that's really what's been sticking in my mind is like, it does not matter in this essence of why this is exciting to me. It is why it's going to be exciting for other people.
Yeah. So good.
Mm.
Speaking of that, what are you feeling optimistic about in this moment? Where are you drawing your hope and inspiration from?
I mean, doing these interviews and putting these stories out is very motivating because there's always more. I was gonna say a glimmer, but much more than a glimmer of hope when I'm sitting with, because I sit with people for 2-3 hours at a time when we do these field notes together and doing the photographs and whatnot. And every single time, I mean, I'm constantly learning, and then that's one experience, and then the experience of actually putting the field notes out into the world is another way for people to share and to learn and to grow in that way. And so that's very, very motivating. And then having an event, 6 months down the road is definitely keeping me going.
If there's somebody listening who's in the mud right now, what would you say to them?
Stay there. Actually, like, sit in it, feel the feelings, and then come move. When you do decide to move, when you decide to take that next step, come from that place, knowing that you've done harder things.
She's good, folks. Okay, Lindsey, we could have a million conversations, and we most likely should, and we will. This will not be your last Unleash appearance. But in the meantime, can you please share with my gorgeous creative cuties where they can find field notes, how they can support you, how they can come to this live event in September, all the things.
Yes. As you mentioned earlier, I spend an inordinate amount of time on LinkedIn. So if you are on LinkedIn, come and hang out there. Lindsey Lerner, that's where I'm at. And on Substack, the Substack is Field Notes from the Work and the Wild. And you'll find that everything is free, open access to anyone who wants to engage or interact with field notes. And then for those who have chosen, there is a paid subscription option. And for the event in September, the ticket link is not yet live. But if you sign up and subscribe to Field Notes, you will be the first one to hear about it.
Okay. So subscribe to Field Notes. That's your call to action. I'll put it in the show notes too. So if anybody still looks at those, you can go there.
Right.
Yes. And I just love you. I'm so grateful our paths crossed and that we get to be friends and supporters of each other. And you're a person who inspires me greatly. And I admire you and love you and think you're a brilliant artist. So thank you for being here.
Right back at you. I love you too.
There you have it, my conversation with the brilliant Lindsey Lerner. One of my biggest takeaways from the conversation is that so much of what we call ambition or discipline can sometimes be just overfunctioning in disguise. And sometimes the most creative thing you can do is stop gripping so hard, open your hands, and allow life. Remember, be less useful. Be more yourself and more creative. I hope this episode gave you permission to loosen your grip somewhere in your own life and your creative journey and listen for what wants to emerge when you get a little quieter. Please go follow Lindsey, subscribe to Field Notes from the Work and the Wild on Substack. You can also connect with her and learn more on lindseylerner.com. And remember, she is a LinkedIn influencer, so check her out on there. She's Lindsey Lerner across all platforms. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with a fellow creative. Go ahead and give us a rating and review on Apple, give us a rating on Spotify, and share on social media. Tag me at Lauren LaGrasso, at Unleash Your Inner Creative. I will repost to share my gratitude. Unleash Your Inner Creative is hosted and executive produced by me, Lauren LaGrasso. It's edited by Blondell Garcon with music by Liz Full. Thank you again for listening. I love you and I believe in you. Talk with you next week.